Galactic Dominion freaks out that vessel isn't logged. And it's approaching at speed. Admiral Zexthara's 4 eyes scanned the holographic displays floating around her command chair. The bridge of the Dominion's fist hummed with the quiet efficiency that had made the Galactic Dominion the supreme power in this spiral arm for over 3,000 years. Today was supposed to be routine patrol duty along the Outer Rim territories. Admiral, we're receiving the weekly tribute shipments from Sector 7, reported Lieutenant Krell, his insectoid mandibles clicking as he spoke. The human colonies are right on schedule with their resource deliveries. Zexthara's tentacles twitched in what passed for a smile among her species. The humans had been surprisingly compliant since their defeat 50 years ago. Unlike the stubborn Regelians or the constantly rebellious Centauri coalition, humanity had simply surrendered. They paid their tributes, followed regulations, and caused no trouble. Boring species, she muttered to herself. No backbone whatsoever. The human colonies were spread across 12 systems in what they called the Soul Sector. Each world dutifully sent raw materials, food supplies, and manufactured goods to fuel the Dominion's war machine. In return, they were allowed to exist under Dominion protection. It was a fair arrangement, in Zexthara's opinion. Admiral! The sharp cry from Communications Officer Veltar made every head on the bridge turn. The young Threnodi's scales had shifted from their usual blue to an alarmed orange. I'm detecting an unregistered vessel approaching our position at high velocity. Zexthara's primary arms tensed. Show me. The main view screen flickered to life, displaying a tactical overview of local space. A red dot moved steadily toward their position, originating from the direction of the human territories. The vessel's signature was unlike anything in their databases. Distance and speed? Zexthara demanded. 2 million kilometers and closing. Current velocity? Veltar paused, his scales shifting to deep purple. Admiral, this can't be right. The readings show it's traveling at 97% of light speed. Silence fell over the bridge. Such speeds were theoretically possible, but the energy requirements were staggering. Only the largest Dominion dreadnoughts had the power cores necessary for sustained near-light travel, and even then only in emergencies. Run the signature through our database again, Zexthara ordered. Check every known vessel class in Dominion service. I've run it 12 times, Admiral, Veltar replied, his voice trembling. No match. The energy signature is completely unknown. Navigation Officer Hixara looked up from her console. Admiral, if I may. The trajectory originates from the human sector. Could this be one of their vessels? A ripple of amused clicks and whistles ran through the bridge crew. The idea was absurd. Human technology was primitive at best. Their fastest ships could barely achieve 10% of light speed, and their weapons were laughably outdated. They used chemical propulsion and crude fusion reactors. Impossible, Zexthara said firmly. The humans barely understand faster-than-light communication, let alone travel. Their most advanced warship wouldn't register as a threat to our smallest patrol craft. Yet the red dot continued its approach, unwavering and impossibly fast. Time to intercept? She asked. At current speed, 17 minutes, Admiral. Zexthara considered her options. The Dominion's fist was a heavy cruiser, equipped with plasma cannons capable of cracking planets and shields that could withstand the fury of a small star. Whatever this mystery vessel was, it would learn the price of approaching a Dominion warship without proper identification. Hail them, she commanded. Standard Dominion protocol? Demand immediate identification and submission to boarding procedures. Veltar's tentacles danced over his console. After several moments, he looked up. No response, Admiral. They're either ignoring us or using an unknown communication protocol. Try again. All frequencies. Minutes passed. The mystery vessel maintained course and speed, showing no signs of slowing or changing trajectory. Zexthara felt a cold sensation creeping up her spine. In 3 decades of service, she had never encountered a vessel that simply ignored Dominion hails. Admiral, Weapons Officer Grixpol called out, request permission to charge main batteries. If this vessel is hostile, granted, but do not fire without my direct order. Zexthura straightened in her command chair. Sensors, give me everything you can about that ship. Size, armament, crew complement. Scanner technician Mordith worked frantically at his station. Admiral, I'm reading massive interference from the vessel's propulsion system. It's like nothing I've ever seen. The energy output is ... extraordinary. Size estimate? Approximately 2 kilometers in length, Admiral. Similar to our heavy cruiser class, but the configuration is... Mordith paused. I'm sorry, Admiral, but the design makes no sense. The power distribution is all wrong according to known physics. Zexthara's patience was wearing thin. Elaborate. The energy readings suggest a power core roughly 10 times more efficient than our own fusion reactors. But that's impossible. The Dominion has the most advanced technology in the galaxy. We've absorbed the knowledge of 100 conquered species. The red dot grew larger on the tactical display. Whatever it was, it showed no signs of slowing down. Admiral, Hixara reported, voice tight with concern, at its current trajectory and speed. The vessel will pass within 500 kilometers of our position. If it maintains course, it's either conducting a very aggressive reconnaissance pass or preparing for an attack, Zexthara finished. Either way, such behavior cannot be tolerated. She activated the ship-wide communication system. All hands, this is the Admiral. We have an unidentified vessel approaching at high speed. Battle stations. Prepare for possible engagement. Throughout the massive ship, alarm klaxons began to wail. The bridge lights shifted to combat red, and blast shields began sliding down over the viewports. The Dominion's fist had seen action against rebellious worlds and pirate fleets. But this felt different. Admiral, Veltar called out. I'm detecting additional energy spikes from the approaching vessel. It appears to be scanning us. Let them scan, Zexthara said grimly. They'll learn that Dominion ships are not easy prey. Grixpol, target their engines. If they won't respond to hails, perhaps a warning shot will get their attention. Main plasma cannons charged and ready. Admiral, the mystery vessel was now close enough to appear as more than a dot on their screens. What they saw made several crew members gasp in surprise. The ship was sleek and angular, unlike the bulky, practical designs favored by the Dominion. It seemed to slice through space with predatory grace. Admiral, Mordith announced, new contact. The vessel is launching something. Multiple small craft heading directly for us. Zexthara's blood ran cold. No species in the galaxy had ever been bold enough to launch an attack on a Dominion warship. The consequences were always swift and brutal. How many? She demanded. 12 craft, Admiral, fighter-sized. They're matching our mystery ship's speed. The impossible just kept getting worse. Galactic Dominion Story, Part 2. Admiral Zexthara watched in growing disbelief as the 12 smaller craft peeled away from their mothership with impossible precision. Each one moved with the fluid grace of a predator, their formations shifting and weaving in patterns that defied conventional tactical doctrine. Admiral, the small craft are requesting communication, Veltar announced, his voice barely above a whisper. Now they want to talk? Zexthara's tentacles lashed in irritation. Put them through. The bridge filled with a clear, strong voice speaking perfect galactic standard. But the accent was unmistakable, human. Dominion vessel. This is Captain Sarah Chun of the Terran Federation Navy. You are ordered to stand down your weapons and prepare for inspection. Stunned silence gripped the bridge. Then nervous laughter broke out among the crew. The idea was so absurd that several officers couldn't contain themselves. A human ordering a Dominion admiral to surrender. Did that primitive just give May orders? Zexthara asked, her voice dripping with disbelief. It appears so, Admiral. Veltar confirmed, his scales now cycling through confused patterns of color. Zexthara activated the communication array herself. Human vessel, you are in violation of at least 30 Dominion statutes. Your species exists at our sufferance. Return to your colonies immediately or face the consequences. The response came back immediately, calm and professional. Admiral Zexthara, we are aware of your identity and service record. This is your final warning. Stand down your weapons. How does she know my name? Zexthara demanded of her crew. Intelligence Officer Korthvan spoke up from his corner station. Admiral, human intelligence capabilities have never been considered a threat. Their communication networks are primitive, easily monitored. There's no way they could have accessed classified Dominion personnel files. Meanwhile, the human fighters had spread into a complex formation around the Dominion's fist. Their movements were unlike anything the Dominion tactical computers could analyze. Traditional fighter formations relied on concentrated firepower and coordinated attacks. These humans seemed to be dancing through space. Admiral, Weapons Officer, Grixpol reported, I'm having difficulty maintaining target locks on the small craft. Their movement patterns are unusual. Define unusual. They're not following any known evasive maneuvers, Admiral. It's as if they're anticipating our targeting systems and staying just ahead of our lock-on sequences. Zexthara studied the tactical display with growing unease. The human fighters weren't just avoiding their targeting systems, they were doing it effortlessly. Each craft moved in three-dimensional spirals that should have been impossible for organic pilots to survive. The G-forces alone would liquefy most known species. Sensor readings on those fighters? She demanded. Mordith worked frantically at his console. Admiral, I'm reading some kind of inertial dampening technology. The pilots inside those craft shouldn't be experiencing the acceleration forces their movement patterns suggest. That's impossible. Inertial dampening requires exotic matter manipulation. We've been working on that technology for centuries. The human captain's voice crackled through the communication system again. Admiral, your time is up. Since you've chosen not to comply, we'll have to take more direct action. Before Zexthara could respond, her entire bridge plunged into darkness. Emergency lighting kicked in moments later, casting everything in an eerie red glow. Consoles flickered and sparked as systems struggled to come back online. Report? Zexthara bellowed. Admiral, we've suffered a complete power core shutdown. Chief Engineer Thalmix's voice came over the comm system, tight with panic. All primary systems are offline. Life support is on backup power. How is that possible? Unknown, Admiral. It wasn't a physical attack. Something interfaced directly with our computer systems and initiated an emergency shutdown. But our computers are protected by quantum encryption barriers. Nothing should be able to. The engineer's voice trailed off. Everyone on the bridge understood the implications. If an enemy could shut down a Dominion warship remotely, without firing a shot, then every vessel in the fleet was vulnerable. Zexthara's communication console flickered back to life. Captain Chen's voice filled the bridge once more. Admiral, we've temporarily disabled your ship's primary systems. No permanent damage has been done. Your crew is safe. However, this demonstrates that continued resistance is futile. Impossible, Zexthara whispered. Our cyber-security systems were designed by the Dominion's greatest minds. We've incorporated countermeasures from dozens of conquered species. Admiral, Veltar called out, I'm detecting massive power spikes from the main human vessel. Whatever they're doing, it's requiring enormous amounts of energy. On the main view screen, the sleek human ship had moved to within visual range. Its hull gleamed with an almost mirror-like finish, and strange energy patterns danced along its surface. As they watched, sections of the ship began to reconfigure themselves, armor plating sliding aside to reveal weapon systems unlike anything in Dominion databases. Those weapons, Grixpol stared at his tactical readouts. Admiral, I'm reading energy signatures that exceed our theoretical maximums. The power output from that single ship is comparable to our entire battle group. Zexthara felt a chill run through her body. A battle group consisted of 15 vessels, including 2 dreadnoughts. The idea that a single ship could match their combined firepower was beyond comprehension. Admiral, Captain Chen's voice came through with what sounded like genuine regret. I want you to understand something. 50 years ago, when your Dominion conquered our worlds, you made a critical error in judgment. And what was that? Zexthara found herself asking despite her better judgment. You assumed that surrendering meant giving up. Humans don't give up, Admiral. We adapt, we learn, we evolve. For 50 years, we've been studying your technology, your tactics, your entire civilization. We've been preparing. The tactical display showed the 12 human fighters moving into new positions. But these weren't attack formations, they were escort patterns. Preparing for what? Zexthara demanded. To take our place among the stars. The Dominion's time as the sole galactic power is over. Humanity is claiming its rightful position. More alarms began blaring across the bridge as new contacts appeared on their sensors. Dozens of them, approaching from multiple vectors. Each signature matched the impossible energy readings of the ship they'd been facing. Admiral, scanner technician Mordeth announced, his voice barely a croak, I'm reading 47 additional vessels, all matching the configuration of the ship we've been engaging. 47? Zexthara repeated numbly. That's just the first wave, Captain Chun added helpfully. The main fleet is still assembling in the outer system. We wouldn't want to overwhelm you all at once. Zexthara looked around her bridge at the faces of her crew. These were veteran officers who had served in campaigns across the galaxy. They had seen the Dominion crush rebellions and absorb entire civilizations. The expression she saw in their eyes was one she had never witnessed before, fear. What do you want? She asked quietly. To talk, Admiral. We're going to have a conversation about the future of this galaxy, and about humanity's place in it, and if I refuse, then we'll have that conversation anyway. But it will be much shorter. The power core of the Dominion's fist suddenly roared back to life. Lights came on, consoles resumed normal operation, and all systems showed green across the board. The demonstration was clear. The humans could cripple their ship whenever they chose. You see, Admiral, Captain Chun continued, we're not the same species you conquered 50 years ago. We've had time to think, to plan, to prepare. The Dominion ruled through superior technology and overwhelming force. But what happens when someone else has superior technology? Zexthara stared at the tactical display showing the impossible human fleet. Each ship represented a level of technological advancement that the Dominion had thought impossible. How had they been so wrong about human capabilities? I suppose, she said slowly, we're about to find out. Galactic Dominion Story, Part 3, Captain Sarah Chun, materialized on the bridge of the Dominion's fist in a cascade of shimmering light particles. The Dominion crew members stepped backward instinctively, their various appendages reaching for weapons that suddenly seemed inadequate. Impressive teleportation technology, Admiral Zexthara observed, trying to maintain her composure despite the impossible demonstration she was witnessing. I wasn't aware humans had developed matter transportation. Sarah smiled, her expression calm and confident. She was tall for a human, with short, cropped dark hair and eyes that seemed to take in every detail of the bridge simultaneously. Her uniform was sleek and functional, made from some material that seemed to shift and adapt to her movements. Among other things, Sarah replied. Thank you for agreeing to this meeting, Admiral. I hope we can resolve our differences peacefully. Differences? Zexthara's tentacles writhed in agitation. Young human, your species exists under Dominion protection. You pay tribute in exchange for peace. There are no differences to resolve. Sarah's expression didn't change, but something cold flickered in her eyes. Admiral, with respect, that arrangement was made under very different circumstances. Circumstances that no longer apply. She gestured toward the main view screen, which now showed the impossible sight of dozens of human vessels maintaining perfect formation around the massive Dominion cruiser. Each ship pulsed with barely contained energy, their weapon systems clearly visible and undeniably threatening. How? Zexthara asked, abandoning diplomatic pretense. How did your species advance so far so quickly? 50 years ago, you could barely maintain orbital platforms. Sarah clasped her hands behind her back and began walking slowly around the bridge, examining the various alien crew members with scientific curiosity. Do you know what humans do when faced with an impossible challenge, Admiral? Surrender, apparently. No, Sarah said firmly. We innovate. We had 50 years to study every piece of Dominion technology we could get our hands on. Every tribute shipment, every inspection, every piece of equipment you left behind. We learned. Lieutenant Krell's mandibles clicked nervously. That's impossible. Our technology includes quantum encryption, biological locks, self-destruct mechanisms. No primitive species could reverse engineer it. Sarah stopped walking and turned to face the insectoid officer. You're right. A primitive species couldn't. But humans aren't primitive anymore. She touched a small device on her wrist, and suddenly the air above the bridge filled with holographic displays showing complex technical schematics. The images rotated and expanded, showing detailed breakdowns of Dominion technology. Fusion reactors, Sarah pointed to one display. Efficient but limited by the binding energy of atomic nuclei. We moved beyond that 15 years ago. Another display showed plasma weapon configurations. Plasma cannons. Impressive energy output, but confined by magnetic containment fields. We developed coherent energy weapons that don't require containment. The displays continued, showing advances in shield technology, faster-than-light travel, and computer systems. Each human innovation surpassed its Dominion equivalent by orders of magnitude. Impossible, Weapons Officer Grixpol breathed. These advances would require centuries of development. Under normal circumstances, yes, Sarah agreed. But humans had advantages you didn't account for, such as... Sarah's smile returned, but now it carried a predatory edge. First, we had working examples of your technology to study. Reverse engineering is faster than original development. Second, we had motivation. Nothing motivates humans quite like the desire for freedom. She paused beside Admiral Zexthara's command chair. But most importantly, we had something your Dominion has never possessed, which is necessity. The Dominion conquered the galaxy through superior technology, then grew comfortable. Why develop new weapons when your current ones are already overwhelming? Why improve your ships when they're already faster than anything else in space? Zexthara felt a chill as she began to understand. You're saying our success made us complacent. Exactly. While you rested on your achievements, humans were fighting for survival. Every day for 50 years, we knew that our continued existence depended on becoming stronger, smarter, and more capable than our conquerors. Communications Officer Veltar spoke up hesitantly. But humans aren't. Your species isn't known for technological innovation. The records show you developed spaceflight only centuries before our arrival. Sarah laughed, and the sound was neither bitter nor mocking. Officer Veltar, isn't it? You're making the same mistake your entire civilization has made. You judge humans by your own standards. She activated another holographic display, this one showing a timeline of human development. Look at our advancement curve, officer. From the first powered flight to orbital platforms, 60 years. From orbital platforms to interstellar travel, 90 years. From stone tools to nuclear fusion, 10,000 years. The timeline rotated, highlighting the exponential nature of human progress. We don't advance linearly like most species. We accelerate. Each breakthrough enables the next one faster than the previous. It's called exponential growth. Intelligence Officer Korthvan studied the display with growing alarm. If this is accurate, then human technological advancement follows a geometric progression rather than an arithmetic one. Very good, Sarah nodded approvingly. Now extrapolate that progression over 50 years of dedicated research. With working examples of advanced technology to study and unlimited motivation to succeed. The bridge fell silent as the implications sank in. If human development truly followed exponential curves, then their current technological superiority wasn't just possible, it was inevitable. There's something else, Sarah continued, her voice becoming more serious. The Dominion rules through fear and overwhelming force. You maintain order by ensuring that no species can challenge your supremacy. But what happens when someone can? Admiral Zexthara straightened in her chair. Are you threatening the Dominion? I'm stating a fact, Admiral. The balance of power in this galaxy has shifted. The question now is whether that shift happens peacefully or violently. Scanner technician Mordith suddenly called out from his station. Admiral, I'm detecting additional energy spikes throughout the system. The human fleet. It's not just 47 ships? Clarify, Zexthara ordered, though she dreaded the answer. Admiral, I'm reading over 300 vessels. They were somehow masking their signatures, but as they power up their weapon systems, they're becoming visible to our sensors. Sarah nodded calmly. We didn't want to alarm you unnecessarily. But since we're discussing the new balance of power, perhaps a full demonstration is appropriate. The main view screen shifted to show a wide-angle view of the entire star system. What they saw defied comprehension. Human ships filled local space in perfectly organized formations. Each vessel gleamed with the same predatory beauty as the first one they'd encountered. 312 ships, Sarah reported matter-of-factly. This is Battlefleet Terra, First Fleet. We have 17 more fleets currently deployed throughout human space. 17 fleets, Zexthara repeated numbly. Over 5,000 ships. The Dominion has maintained galactic peace through superior firepower, Sarah observed. Your total fleet consists of approximately 2,000 vessels. I trust the mathematical implications are clear. Chief Engineer Thalmic's voice crackled over the communication system. Admiral, I'm reading power signatures from those ships that exceed our theoretical maximums. If they're accurate, a single human vessel could engage an entire Dominion squadron. Sarah's expression softened slightly. Admiral, I want you to understand something important. Humanity doesn't seek conquest for its own sake. We don't want to rule the galaxy the way the Dominion has. But we also won't accept subjugation any longer. Then what do you want? Zexthara asked. Partnership, equality, a seat at the table when galactic policy is decided. Sarah's eyes hardened. What we will no longer accept is being treated as primitives who exist at your sufferance. The bridge of the Dominion's fist hummed with tension as both sides contemplated the magnitude of what was happening. The galaxy's oldest power structure was being challenged by a species that had been written off as insignificant. And if the Dominion refuses? Zexthara asked quietly. Sarah's smile returned, but now it held no warmth at all. Then we'll have this conversation with your replacements. Galactic Dominion Story, Part 4, Admiral Zexthara, sat in stunned silence as the weight of the human captain's words settled over her bridge. Around her, the crew of the Dominion's Fist worked at their stations with nervous energy, stealing glances at the displays showing the impossible human fleet that surrounded them. You're talking about war, Zexthara finally said. A galactic war that could devastate countless worlds. Sarah Chun remained standing near the command chair, her posture relaxed but alert. Admiral, the Dominion has already been at war for 3 millennia. You've conquered hundreds of species, absorbed their territories, and forced them into submission. The only difference now is that someone has the power to fight back. The Dominion brought peace to the galaxy? Zexthara protested. Before our expansion, these systems were constantly at war with each other. We ended the chaos. You ended their freedom, Sarah corrected. There's a difference between peace and oppression. Navigation Officer Hixara spoke up hesitantly. Captain Chun, surely you understand the complexity of galactic governance? Without central authority, trade breaks down, territories dispute boundaries, resources are wasted on conflicts. The Dominion system, while perhaps imperfect, has brought stability. Sarah turned to face the officer, her expression thoughtful. Officer Hixara, you're absolutely right about the challenges of galactic governance. But you're assuming that authoritarian rule is the only solution. She activated her wrist device again, and new holographic displays filled the air above the bridge. These showed star charts, but not like any the Dominion crew had seen before. Instead of the rigid territorial boundaries that marked Dominion space, these charts showed complex networks of interconnected systems. This is the Terran Federation's proposal for galactic governance, Sarah explained. A voluntary association of independent worlds with democratic representation based on population and economic contribution. Disputes resolved through arbitration rather than conquest. Trade agreements instead of tribute demands. Lieutenant Krell's mandibles clicked skeptically. Impossible. Too many species have conflicting interests. Without absolute authority, the system would collapse into chaos within decades. Would it? Sarah asked. Admiral, are you familiar with the history of human political development? Zexthara's tentacles twitched in annoyance. I see no relevance to. Humor me, Sarah interrupted. For thousands of years, humans lived in small tribes that constantly fought each other. We had the same problems you describe: conflicting interests, resource disputes, territorial conflicts. Our solution was to develop systems of cooperation that protected individual freedoms while maintaining social order. The holographic displays shifted to show examples of human democratic systems. It took us centuries to perfect these systems. We made countless mistakes, fought devastating wars, and sometimes our experiments in self-governance failed completely. But eventually, we learned how to balance individual liberty with collective security. Weapons Officer Grixpol leaned forward in his chair. Human political systems work for humans. That doesn't mean they would work for hundreds of different species with completely different biological and cultural needs. Sarah nodded approvingly. Excellent point, officer. You're absolutely right that different species have different needs, which is exactly why authoritarian rule doesn't work either. She gestured to another display showing demographic analysis of Dominion territories. Look at the rebellion statistics for the past century. The Regelians revolt every 18 months on average. The Centauri coalition requires constant military presence to maintain order. The vegan territories have attempted secession 47 times. Malcontents and troublemakers, Zexthara muttered. They lack the wisdom to appreciate the benefits of Dominion rule. Or maybe, Sarah suggested, they have needs that authoritarian rule can't meet. Maybe forcing dozens of different species into the same rigid system is the real problem. Scanner technician Mordith looked up from his console. Captain, are you suggesting that species-specific governance might be more effective than universal law? I'm suggesting that flexibility is stronger than rigidity, Sarah replied. The Federation model allows for local self-determination within an overarching framework of cooperation. Species that want centralized authority can have it. Species that prefer democratic systems can choose that path. The key is voluntary participation rather than forced compliance. Communications Officer Veltar S. scales shifted to confused orange patterns. But without absolute authority, how do you resolve conflicts between species with incompatible requirements? Sarah smiled. The same way humans resolve conflicts between individuals with incompatible requirements. Through negotiation, compromise, and mutual respect. It's not always easy, but it's more stable in the long run than suppression. She paused, allowing the crew to absorb her words. Admiral, may I ask you something personal? Zexthara's primary eyes focused on the human captain. Proceed. How many species in your own fleet crews dream of independence? How many of your officers serve the Dominion because they believe in its mission, versus how many serve because they have no choice? The question hung in the air like a challenge. Zexthara looked around her bridge at the faces of her crew. They represented 7 different species, all conquered by the Dominion at various points in history. All serving loyally, but she had never questioned their motivations. My crew serves with honor, she said finally. I don't doubt it, Sarah replied. But would they choose to serve if they had other options? Chief Engineer Tholmix interrupted over the communication system. Admiral, I'm reading massive power fluctuations from the human fleet. They appear to be charging some kind of weapon system. Sarah touched her wrist device. It's a demonstration, Engineer. We want to show you something. On the main view screen, the human fleet began to move. But instead of taking aggressive positions, the ships arranged themselves into a complex 3-dimensional pattern. Energy beams lanced between the vessels, connecting them in a web of brilliant light. What are you doing? Zexthara demanded. Creating a communication network? Sarah explained. Each ship in our fleet contains representatives from multiple human colonies. We're about to hold a vote on whether to proceed with negotiations or move to more direct action. The energy web pulsed with data streams flowing between the ships. Even at this distance, the Dominion sensors could detect the massive amount of information being exchanged. You're voting? Veltar asked in disbelief. In the middle of a military operation, you're holding a democratic vote? Democracy doesn't stop being important just because we're in space, Sarah replied. This decision affects every human in the galaxy. They deserve a voice in how we proceed. Minutes passed as data flowed through the human fleet. Finally, the energy web faded, and Sarah checked a display on her wrist. The vote is complete, she announced. 87% in favor of continued negotiations. 13% preferred immediate action. Admiral Zexthara stared at the human captain in amazement. In the middle of what could become the largest military confrontation in galactic history, the humans had paused to ask their citizens for guidance. You realize, she said slowly, that such consultations make rapid military response impossible? In battle, hesitation means defeat. Sarah's expression grew serious. Admiral, humans have learned that wars fought without popular support cannot be sustained. We'd rather take time to ensure we're fighting for the right reasons than rush into conflict we might later regret. And if we had attacked during your vote? Then the 13% who wanted immediate action would have gotten their wish, Sarah replied calmly. But we calculated that risk as acceptable, given your crew's obvious reluctance to fire on us. The admission hung in the air like an accusation. Zexthara realized that the human captain had read her crew's hesitation accurately. Faced with overwhelming technological superiority, her officers had instinctively looked for alternatives to combat. So what happens now? She asked. Sarah smiled, and for the first time it seemed genuinely warm. Now we talk about the future, Admiral. About what the galaxy could become if we work together instead of against each other. Admiral Zexthara found herself in the unprecedented position of hosting peace negotiations aboard her own warship. The main conference room of the Dominion's Fist had been hastily converted into a diplomatic meeting space, with additional chairs brought in to accommodate both human and Dominion representatives. Captain Sarah Chun sat across from Zexthara at the oval table, flanked by two other human officers who had transported over from the fleet. The humans seemed completely at ease despite being surrounded by potential enemies. Before we begin formal negotiations, Sarah said, I'd like to address some misconceptions about human intentions. She activated a portable holographic projector, filling the space above the table with star charts. This shows current Dominion territory in blue and human-controlled systems in red. The display revealed that human space occupied only a small fraction of Dominion territory, 12 systems compared to over 3,000. As you can see, Sarah continued, humanity isn't interested in territorial expansion for its own sake. We're not trying to replace the Dominion as galactic overlords. Admiral Zexthara studied the display carefully. Then what are your objectives, Captain? Self-determination for humanity and the opportunity to participate in galactic affairs as equals rather than subjects. Sarah gestured to another section of the display. We propose the creation of autonomous human space with full sovereign rights within our established territories. Lieutenant Krell leaned forward in his chair. And what about other species? Will you support similar independence movements throughout Dominion space? Sarah exchanged glances with her fellow officers before answering. We believe that any species should have the right to self-determination. However, we're not actively encouraging rebellion. Our focus is on establishing precedent through our own example. Precedent, Zexthara repeated thoughtfully. You're hoping that successful human independence will inspire others. We're hoping that successful human independence will demonstrate that alternatives to authoritarian rule are possible. Sarah corrected. What other species choose to do with that information is up to them. Intelligence Officer Korthvan spoke up from his position near the conference room's back wall. Captain Chun, our analysis suggests that human technological advancement extends beyond weapons and propulsion systems. What other capabilities has your species developed? Sarah smiled. I'm glad you asked, officer. Technological development isn't just about military applications. The holographic display changed to show various human installations and facilities. We've made significant advances in terraforming technology, allowing us to make marginally habitable worlds fully comfortable for multiple species. Our medical technology can now treat genetic conditions across dozens of different biological systems. She highlighted a particular installation. This facility produces enough food to feed 50 million beings of various species. We've developed agricultural techniques that work in almost any environment. Navigation Officer Hiksara looked intrigued. You're offering technological sharing? We're offering cooperation, Sarah clarified. The universe is vast enough for all of us. Human advancement doesn't require other species to remain primitive. Zexthura felt a growing unease as she considered the implications. Captain, you're describing a fundamental restructuring of galactic civilization. The economic and political ramifications would be staggering. Change is always disruptive, Sarah acknowledged. But stagnation leads to decay. The Dominion has maintained the same systems for 3,000 years. During that time, scientific advancement has slowed. Cultural development has stagnated, and social problems have been suppressed rather than solved. She gestured to another display showing statistical analysis. Rebellion rates are increasing across Dominion space. Resource extraction efficiency is declining. Even within Dominion core worlds, there's growing discontent with authoritarian policies. You've been monitoring our internal affairs? Zexthara asked sharply. We've been paying attention, Sarah replied diplomatically. Admiral, may I ask you a personal question? Are you satisfied with the current state of galactic civilization? The question caught Zexthara off guard. In 3 decades of military service, no one had ever asked her opinion about the broader purpose of their mission. I serve the Dominion loyally, she said carefully. That's not what I asked, Sarah pressed gently. Do you believe that the current system is the best possible outcome for all the species involved? Zexthara looked around the conference room at her officers. Many of them were watching the exchange with obvious interest, their expressions revealing doubts they'd never been permitted to voice. The current system maintains order, she said finally. Order isn't the same thing as justice, Sarah observed, or prosperity or happiness or fulfillment. Order is just the absence of obvious conflict. Communications Officer Veltar spoke up hesitantly. Captain, assuming for a moment that alternative governance models are possible, how would transitions occur? You're talking about changes that would affect trillions of beings. Carefully and gradually, Sarah replied. We're not suggesting overnight revolution. We're proposing a pilot program. The holographic display changed to show a detailed plan. Human space becomes an autonomous region within a broader galactic federation. We maintain our own government, defense forces, and economic systems, but participate in wider diplomatic and trade networks. And if the pilot program fails? Zexthara asked. Then we'll have learned something valuable about the challenges of democratic governance on a galactic scale, Sarah admitted. But if it succeeds, it provides a model for other species who want more control over their own affairs. Scanner technician Mordith looked up from a data pad he'd been studying. Captain, I've been analyzing the technological specifications you've provided. Some of these advances seem to require resources that don't exist in known human space. Sarah nodded approvingly. Very observant, technician. You're correct. Many of our recent advances required exotic materials and energy sources that we obtained through trade agreements. Trade agreements with whom? Zexthara demanded. Humans have been restricted to commerce only with approved Dominion suppliers. Official commerce, yes, Sarah agreed. But the galaxy is a large place, Admiral. There are many species who aren't entirely satisfied with Dominion trade policies. The implications hit the conference room like a shock wave. If humans had been conducting unauthorized trade relationships, It meant they'd been building an entirely separate economic network outside Dominion oversight. That's a violation of at least a dozen trade statutes, Korthvin protested. Yes, it is, Sarah acknowledged without apparent concern. Which raises an interesting question about the legitimacy of laws imposed without representation or consent. Chief Engineer Tholmic's voice came through the communication system. Admiral, I'm reading some unusual energy signatures from the human fleet. It appears they're conducting some kind of large-scale technological demonstration. Sarah checked her wrist display. Perfect timing. Admiral, would you and your officers like to see what galactic cooperation can accomplish? Through the conference room's viewports, they could see the human fleet arranging itself into new formations. Energy beams connected the ships, but instead of the communication network they'd seen before, this created something entirely different. What are they doing? Zexthara asked. Building something, Sarah replied. Watch. The energy beams intensified, and space around the fleet began to shimmer. Slowly, structure began to emerge from the apparently empty vacuum. Within minutes, a massive space station materialized, complete with docking bays, living quarters, and industrial facilities. Impossible, Weapons Officer Grixpol breathed. You can't construct matter from energy. It violates fundamental conservation laws. We're not creating matter, Sarah explained. We're assembling prefabricated components stored in compressed dimensional spaces aboard each ship. It's a new construction technique that allows us to build major installations quickly and efficiently. The completed station hung in space like a small city, its hull gleaming with the same advanced materials as the human ships. Landing bays opened and small craft began moving between the station and the surrounding vessels. This station will serve as a diplomatic embassy and cultural exchange center, Sarah announced. It's our gift to the Dominion, regardless of how these negotiations conclude. Admiral Zexthara stared at the impossible structure through the viewport. In less than an hour, the humans had built something that would have taken Dominion engineers months to complete, using techniques and technologies that shouldn't exist. Why? She asked quietly. Because, Sarah said, humans believe that cooperation builds stronger foundations than conquest. We want to show you what we can accomplish together, rather than what we can destroy separately. For the first time in her military career, Zexthara found herself questioning everything she thought she knew about power, politics, and the nature of galactic civilization. Galactic Dominion Story, Part 6, The Diplomatic Station hung in space like a technological marvel, its gleaming hull reflecting the light of distant stars. Admiral Zexthara stood on the observation deck of the newly constructed facility, watching as representatives from various species arrived for what humans were calling the Galactic Cooperation Summit. 3 days had passed since the initial encounter with Captain Sarah Chun, and word of the human technological demonstration had spread throughout Dominion, space faster than official communications could contain it. Ships from dozens of systems had requested permission to observe the proceedings. Admiral, Communications Officer Veltar approached carefully. We're receiving communication requests from over 40 different sector commanders. They're demanding status updates on the situation. Zexthara's tentacles writhed in frustration. She had sent preliminary reports to Dominion High Command, but the responses had been predictably bureaucratic. The Council of Overlords refused to believe that a primitive species could pose any serious challenge to Dominion supremacy. Tell them we're conducting extended negotiations with representatives of human colonies, she instructed. Nothing more. Through the transparent walls of the observation deck, she could see human engineers working, alongside volunteers from her own crew to install translation systems and environmental controls suitable for multiple species. The cooperation was remarkable. Members of species that had been enemies for centuries were working together toward common goals. Admiral, Captain Chun's voice came from behind her. The summit is ready to begin whenever you are. Zexthara turned to face the human captain, who wore the same calm expression that had become frustratingly familiar. Captain, I must ask, what do you expect to accomplish here? Even if we reach agreements, the Dominion Council will never ratify them. Sarah smiled. Admiral, you're thinking in terms of traditional diplomacy. But this isn't really about formal treaties or official recognition. Then what is it about? Proof of concept, Sarah replied. Every species representative here will return to their home systems with first-hand knowledge of alternative possibilities. Ideas have a way of spreading, regardless of official policies. They entered the main conference hall, which had been designed to accommodate the environmental needs of dozens of different species. The air was carefully filtered and temperature-controlled, with specialized seating arrangements for beings ranging from insectoid Threnody to the gaseous veil dancers. As Zexthara took her place at the central table, she was amazed by the diversity of the assembly. Representatives from nearly 50 different species filled the chamber, many of them from systems that rarely communicated with each other. Welcome, Sarah began, addressing the gathered delegates, to what we hope will be the first of many such gatherings. Today, we're not here as conquerors or subjects, superiors or inferiors. We're here as equals, sharing ideas about our collective future. A Regalian delegate raised one of his 4 arms. Captain Chin, while we appreciate the invitation, many of us are here primarily out of curiosity about human technological capabilities. What evidence can you provide that democratic governance models are practical on a galactic scale? Sarah activated the chamber's holographic display system. An excellent question, Ambassador Kekstar. Let me share some data from our recent experiments. The display showed detailed analysis of human colonial governments over the past 50 years. Despite the constraints of Dominion oversight, human settlements had developed sophisticated systems for resource allocation, conflict resolution, and collective decision-making. These statistics show crime rates, productivity indexes, and citizen satisfaction surveys from human colonies using participatory governance models, Sarah explained. Compare them to similar data from colonies using traditional authoritarian structures. The results were striking. Democratic human colonies showed consistently higher productivity, lower crime rates, and significantly better citizen satisfaction scores than their authoritarian counterparts. Centauri delegate leaned forward with obvious interest. These results suggest that voluntary cooperation is more efficient than forced compliance. In most circumstances, yes, Sarah confirmed. Though we should acknowledge that different species may have different optimal governance structures, the key principle is self-determination rather than imposed systems. Intelligence Officer Korthvin, who had been granted permission to attend as an observer, spoke up from his corner of the chamber. Captain, these results are impressive, but they involve a single species with shared cultural values. How would such systems handle conflicts between species with fundamentally incompatible requirements? Through the same mechanisms that handle conflicts between individuals with incompatible requirements, Sarah replied. Mediation, arbitration, and compromise. Sometimes separation when necessary. She changed the display to show a case study. 6 months ago, 2 human colonies had a territorial dispute over mining rights in an asteroid belt. Instead of appealing to Dominion authorities or resorting to force, they submitted the matter to arbitration by neutral human settlements. The display showed the arbitration process in detail, evidence presentation, expert testimony, and a binding decision that both colonies accepted. The resolution took 4 months and cost significantly less than military enforcement would have required, Sarah noted. More importantly, both colonies remain on good terms and have since collaborated on joint mining operations that benefit everyone involved. A delegate from the vegan territories, a species known for their aggressive tendencies, spoke up. But what about disputes that can't be resolved through arbitration? Some conflicts have no acceptable compromise. Sarah's expression grew more serious. You're absolutely right, Ambassador Thrixivil. Some conflicts can't be resolved peacefully. In those cases, species have the right to defend themselves, just as they do under current Dominion law, but without central authority. How do you prevent small conflicts from escalating into galactic wars? The vegan pressed. Through mutual defense agreements and collective security arrangements, Sarah replied. Species that agree to arbitration and peaceful conflict resolution receive protection from those who don't. Aggressive action against peaceful species triggers collective response from the entire Federation. Admiral Zextara found herself genuinely intrigued by the discussion. Captain, you're describing a system where military force is used only defensively? Primarily, yes. Though we should be honest about the realities of galactic politics. Sometimes preemptive action is necessary to prevent genocide or other atrocities, but such actions would require overwhelming consensus from Federation members. Scanner Technician Mordith raised his hand. Captain, I've been analyzing the economic implications of your proposals. How would trade and resource distribution work without central regulation? Sarah smiled approvingly. Another excellent question. Let me show you something interesting. The display changed to show trade flow analysis throughout current human space. Despite Dominion restrictions, an intricate network of voluntary trade relationships had developed between human colonies and other species. Free trade based on mutual benefit rather than regulatory compliance, Sarah explained. Colonies and species trade what they have in abundance for what they need. Market forces and reputation systems maintain fairness better than bureaucratic oversight. But what about essential resources that some systems lack entirely? Mordith pressed. Mutual aid agreements, Sarah replied. Species that have abundance in certain resources agree to share with those that don't in exchange for other benefits. It's enlightened self-interest. Helping your neighbors ultimately helps yourself. The Threnody delegate scales shifted to curious purple patterns. Captain, these systems sound remarkably similar to pre-Dominion alliance networks that existed in some regions. But those networks collapsed due to internal conflicts. True, Sarah acknowledged. Which is why modern Federation models include conflict resolution mechanisms that didn't exist in earlier systems. We've learned from historical failures. Hours passed as the discussion continued, covering everything from resource allocation to military organization to cultural exchange programs. Throughout the debate, Zexthara noticed something remarkable. Species that had been enemies for centuries were finding common ground. As the session drew to a close, Sarah stood to address the assembly. Friends, we've covered a lot of ground today. I want to leave you with one final thought. The chamber fell silent. Dozens of different types of beings focusing their attention on the human captain. The current galactic system isn't broken because it's evil or because the Dominion is malicious, Sarah said carefully. It's broken because it's static. 3,000 years of the same policies, the same power structures, the same solutions to new problems. She gestured to the diverse assembly around her. But look what we've accomplished in a single day. Species that barely communicate under normal circumstances have shared ideas, found solutions, and discovered mutual interests. Imagine what we could accomplish in a year or a decade or a century of such cooperation. The delegates began to murmur among themselves, discussing possibilities and exchanging contact information. Galactic Dominion Story, Part 7. The Dominion fleet emerged from hyperspace like an avalanche of metal and fury. Nearly 100 warships, including 12 massive dreadnoughts, arranged themselves in perfect battle formation around the diplomatic station. Admiral Zextara watched from the observation deck as the largest military force in galactic history took positions for what could become the most devastating conflict ever recorded. Admiral Zexthara. The communication system crackled, with the unmistakable voice of Supreme Overlord Vashtai himself. You are ordered to immediately cease all unauthorized negotiations and prepare for extraction. The human terrorists are to be eliminated. Sarah Chun stood beside Zexthara at the observation window, her expression calm despite the overwhelming firepower now aimed at their position. Well, she said quietly, I suppose diplomatic solutions just became more complicated. Captain, Zexthara said urgently, you need to evacuate your people immediately. The Supreme Overlord isn't known for patience or mercy. He'll order an attack within minutes. Sarah smiled, but her eyes held a steely determination. Admiral, humans have been preparing for this moment for 50 years. We're not running. Through the viewport, they could see the human fleet moving into new positions. The 300 vessels that had seemed so impressive days earlier now looked pitifully small compared to the massive Dominion armada. Captain. Communications Officer Veltar's voice carried barely controlled panic. The Dominion flagship is hailing us. Supreme Overlord Veshtai demands to speak with you personally. Sarah touched her wrist communicator. Put him through to the station's main communication system. The air shimmered, and suddenly a massive holographic projection filled the observation deck. Supreme Overlord Veshtai was an imposing figure even by Dominion standards, over 3 meters tall, with 6 arms and skin that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. So, Veshtai's voice boomed through the chamber. The primitive human who thinks she can challenge the might of the Dominion. I am almost impressed by your audacity. Supreme Overlord, Sarah replied respectfully. I prefer to think of it as optimism about the future. Veshtai's laugh was like grinding metal. Future? Child, you have no future. In approximately 10 minutes, my fleet will reduce your ships to cosmic dust and this abomination of a station to scrap metal. Your species will learn the price of defying the natural order. Natural order? Sarah asked. Is that what you call 3 millennia of oppression? I call it stability, Veshtai snapped. The galaxy was chaos before the Dominion brought order. Endless wars, resource conflicts, species destroying each other for temporary advantage. We ended that chaos. Sarah stepped closer to the holographic projection. You replaced it with stagnation. 3,000 years of the same policies, the same power structures, the same solutions. When was the last time the Dominion developed a new technology, created a new art form, or even had an original idea? We don't need new ideas, Veshtai declared. Perfection requires no improvement. Then explain why rebellion rates are increasing across your territory, Sarah countered. Explain why your core worlds are experiencing civil unrest. Explain why your own military commanders are starting to question their orders. Admiral Zexthara felt every eye in the chamber turn toward her. The Supreme Overlord's projection focused on her with predatory intensity. Ah, Admiral Zexthara, Veshtai said, his voice dangerously soft. I hear you've been having interesting conversations with our human friends. I trust you haven't forgotten your oath of loyalty to the Dominion? Zexthara straightened, feeling the weight of the moment. Everything she had believed about duty, honor, and service was being tested. Supreme Overlord, I have served the Dominion faithfully for 30 years. Faithfully, yes. But perhaps not wisely, Veshtai observed. You were ordered to eliminate a minor human insurgency. Instead, you've allowed them to construct a propaganda platform and spread seditious ideas throughout our territory. Sir, the situation is more complex than initial reports suggested. Zexthara began. Complex? Veshtai's projection leaned forward menacingly. Admiral, there is nothing complex about maintaining order. You identify threats and eliminate them. These humans are a threat. Therefore, they must be eliminated. Sarah stepped forward again. Supreme Overlord, before you commit to a course of action that will devastate countless worlds, perhaps you'd be interested in a demonstration of why military force alone may not be sufficient. You think your primitive technology frightens me? Veshtai sneered. I have studied your capabilities, human. Your ships are fast and your weapons are advanced, but you are outnumbered 3-1 by the most powerful fleet in galactic history. Numbers aren't everything, Sarah replied. Admiral Zexthara, would you please scan the Dominion fleet and tell me what you observe? Confused by the request, Zexthara activated her portable scanner. The readings made her tentacles freeze in shock. Supreme Overlord, I'm detecting massive system irregularities throughout your fleet. Explain, Veshtai demanded. Sir, approximately 30% of your vessels are showing power fluctuations in their primary systems. Another 20% have communication system malfunctions. And double quotes, she paused, hardly believing the readings. 15 of your ships appear to have had their weapon systems completely disabled. The projection of Vashti flickered as he turned to consult with his own officers. When he faced them again, his expression was murderous. What have you done? He growled at Sarah. We've demonstrated that superior technology isn't just about bigger weapons, Sarah replied calmly. For the past 3 days, while your fleet was assembling, human specialists have been using advanced cyber warfare techniques to infiltrate your ship systems. Impossible. Our computer networks are protected by quantum encryption and biological locks. Sarah's smile was patient but implacable. Supreme Overlord, your security systems were designed to protect against known threats. But humans specialize in creating unknown solutions to impossible problems. The implications hit the chamber like a shock wave. If humans could disable Dominion ships remotely without firing a shot, then traditional military superiority was meaningless. You're bluffing, Vashti declared, but his voice lacked its earlier confidence. Am I? Sarah activated her risk communicator. Commander Hayes, please demonstrate our capabilities for the Supreme Overlord. Throughout the Dominion fleet, ships began experiencing cascade system failures. Weapons powered down, shields flickered, and several smaller vessels lost main propulsion entirely. The massive dreadnoughts remained operational, but even they showed signs of system interference. This is impossible, Vashti raged. No species has ever developed such capabilities. No species has ever had such motivation, Sarah corrected. Supreme Overlord, you're fighting the last war with the last generation's technology. But humans have spent 50 years preparing for this war with next generation's capabilities. Admiral Zexthara watched in fascination as the tactical situation completely reversed itself. The massive Dominion fleet, which had seemed overwhelmingly powerful minutes earlier, was now vulnerable and partially disabled. What are your terms? Vashti asked through gritted teeth. The same terms we offered 3 days ago, Sarah replied. Autonomous human space within a voluntary galactic federation. Self-determination for any species that chooses it. Cooperative governance based on mutual benefit rather than imposed authority. And if I refuse? Sarah's expression grew sad. Then we'll disable the remainder of your fleet, occupy your core worlds, and implement these changes by force. But that would make us no better than the system we're trying to replace. The holographic projection showed Vashti consulting frantically with his advisors. Minutes passed in tense silence before he faced them again. You realize, he said finally, that accepting your terms means the end of the Dominion as we know it? Yes, Sarah admitted. But it also means the beginning of something better. A galactic civilization based on cooperation instead of conquest, progress instead of stagnation, hope instead of fear. Vashti was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice carried the weight of 3 millennia of absolute power coming to an end. Admiral Zexthara, as the senior Dominion officer present, what is your assessment of the situation? Zexthara felt every being in the chamber watching her. The moment would define not just her own future, but the future of galactic civilization itself. Sir, she said slowly, I believe that continued resistance is not only futile, but counterproductive. The humans have demonstrated capabilities that make traditional military solutions obsolete. More importantly, they've demonstrated ideals that might actually work. You're recommending surrender? I'm recommending adaptation, sir. The universe has changed around us. We can either change with it or be left behind. The Supreme Overlord's projection flickered with what might have been exhaustion. Very well. Captain Chun, I hereby authorize Admiral Zexthara to negotiate terms for the transition of Dominion territories to your proposed Federation model. Sarah bowed respectfully. Thank you, Supreme Overlord. I promise you won't regret this decision. I regret it already, Vashti muttered. But I regret the alternative even more,